There is a war happening inside you every single day, not outside in the world, but in the quiet corners of your own mind. And the enemy? It's not people, it's not situations. It's the silent habits you've allowed to live within you, slowly destroying your self-worth while you smile in front of the world. Today, I want to shine a light on those hidden habits, because the moment you become aware, you start winning. And remember this, God never made a worthless soul, so how dare we think any less of ourselves? My dear friends, in the journey of life, we often chase validation from the outside world, through success, relationships, appearance, achievements. But in this pursuit, we forget to nurture the most sacred relationship of all, the one we have with ourselves, the one that connects us directly to the higher power. We don't need any label, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Buddhist. To know this truth, God resides in the core of your being. And when we start silently harming ourselves through toxic inner habits, we distance ourselves from that divine presence. This speech is not just about motivation. It's about inner resurrection. It's about reclaiming the version of you that you were always meant to be. Not what the world told you to be, not what pain shaped you into, but what God planted deep inside you, pure, powerful, and full of purpose. Let's now unveil the 5 silent habits that are killing your self-worth and add 2 bonus practices that help restore it. There's a silent killer more dangerous than any enemy. It is the habit of negative self-talk. This is not just some casual inner dialogue we ignore throughout the day. This is the very voice that shapes how we view ourselves, how we show up in the world, and how we either rise or collapse in moments of struggle. Every thought you whisper to yourself carries more weight than what the world ever says about you. And yet, most people walk around with a mind full of self-judgment, silently punishing themselves for not being good enough, smart enough, attractive enough, or successful enough. Imagine waking up in the morning and the very first words in your head are not, "Thank you, God, for a new day," but instead, "I'm already behind. I didn't do enough yesterday. I look tired." Or, "I don't think I can handle today." That is how many of us start our day, not with gratitude, not with inner strength, but with self-criticism. And then we carry that energy throughout the day, thinking it's normal. But it's not normal, it's silent destruction. You are setting the tone of your life based on lies you keep repeating to yourself. This type of inner dialogue becomes habitual. It doesn't happen once or twice. It becomes a soundtrack in the background of your everyday life. You fail a test, and instead of saying, "It's okay, I'll do better next time," you tell yourself, "I'm stupid." You don't get a job, and instead of thinking, "It wasn't meant for me," you think, "I'm not capable." You go through a breakup, and instead of understanding that it just didn't work out, you say, "Maybe I'm not lovable enough." Every time you choose self-blame over self-understanding, you weaken your relationship with yourself. You slowly erode your own sense of worth. Now think about a child, a 5-year-old child who tries to tie their shoelaces and struggles. Would you call that child stupid? Would you tell them they're worthless because they didn't succeed at something small? Never. You would encourage them, guide them, help them try again. You'd say, "It's okay, you're learning, keep going." And yet, as adults, we don't give ourselves even a fraction of that compassion. We become our harshest critics, forgetting that the journey of growth is messy and full of missteps. Let's take a real life example. Imagine someone is preparing for a presentation at work. They've worked hard, stayed up late, rehearsed everything. But when the time comes, they forget a point, stutter slightly, and feel embarrassed. What do most people do afterward? They go home and replay that moment 50 times in their head, magnifying it beyond proportion. They tell themselves, I'm so bad at speaking, everyone must think I'm incompetent. Why did I even try? That one slip up becomes a full blown attack on their self worth. But what if they changed the narrative? What if they said, I showed up, I tried, I'll do better next time? That shift in self talk isn't just motivational, it's transformational. The words you speak to yourself become your belief system. And beliefs are powerful, they shape your identity. If you repeatedly tell yourself you're not good enough, that belief starts governing your actions. You stop trying new things. You shrink in front of opportunities. You stay silent in rooms where your voice deserves to be heard. You settle for less, not because you lack ability, but because you've convinced yourself you lack worth. One of the biggest lies the mind feeds us is that harsh self-criticism will make us better. That if we're hard enough on ourselves, we'll improve. But the truth is, shame never builds anything. It only breaks. Growth doesn't come from self-hate. It comes from self-respect. Even the most fertile soil needs sunlight. And your mind, your soul, your dreams, they don't grow under the weight of self-punishment. They grow when you choose to water them with kindness, patience, and encouragement. This doesn't mean we ignore our flaws. It means we address them with the same love that God has for us. He doesn't abandon us when we fall. He strengthens us so we rise. And if the divine can see your worth in your darkest hour, why can't you? Why do we allow our inner voice to become the loudest source of judgment when it should be the greatest source of strength? You need to become your own sanctuary. Your inner voice should be your healer, not your executioner. When you fall, speak to yourself like someone who matters. When you doubt, speak with faith. When you fear, speak with courage. Because the more positively you speak to yourself, the more permission you give to your soul to thrive. Words have energy. Speak life over yourself. Tell yourself daily, I am enough. Even if you don't fully believe it yet, speak it until your soul starts to remember the truth. In the quiet hours of your day, where no one is watching and no audience is applauding, that's where your self-worth is either built or broken. Choose to build. And remember, God did not place you on this earth to be your own enemy. You are not here to break yourself down. You are here to rise. Start within. Speak with love. Speak with faith. Speak like someone created by a power higher than doubt. ChatGPT said, comparison is one of the most subtle yet deeply damaging habits we develop, often without realizing it. It starts so quietly. Maybe you scroll through your phone and see someone on a beach, smiling, looking perfect. You look at their success, their beauty, their lifestyle, and suddenly your own life feels smaller. You were feeling okay a moment ago. But now there's a voice whispering in your head, why don't I have that? Why don't I look like that? Why am I so far behind? This is how comparison begins. Not as a choice, but as a reaction. And if not controlled, it becomes a prison you live in every single day. This habit is silent because it doesn't scream. It whispers. It doesn't destroy you all at once. It eats you piece by piece. You start questioning your own blessings. You begin overlooking your own progress. And soon, you start living a life based on someone else's highlight reel. The result? You lose connection with your own journey. You forget who you are and what you're here for. That is how self-worth dies. when you measure your value through someone else's reflection. Let's bring this to real life. Imagine a young woman who works hard at her job. She's climbing her own ladder step by step. She's doing better than she was a year ago. She's learning, growing, becoming stronger. But then she sees her old college friend post about buying a new house, traveling abroad, or getting engaged. Suddenly, all her own progress feels meaningless. She begins to question herself. Am I behind? Am I missing something? Why does everyone else seem to be moving faster than me? It's not that her life got worse. It's that her perspective got hijacked. The truth is, comparison blinds you from your blessings. It makes you ungrateful for what you've been given. And here's the danger: gratitude and comparison cannot live in the same heart. When you constantly look outside and measure your worth based on what others are doing, you kill the joy inside you. You tell yourself you are not enough, not because it's true, but because someone else is living a different life. And you've convinced yourself that theirs is better. But here's what most people forgetting: you don't know what's happening behind their photos, their smiles, or their achievements. You don't know their pain, their sacrifices, or their silent struggles. Every person's journey is uniquely designed. Just like no two fingerprints are the same, no two paths are meant to look alike. You were never created to walk someone else's path. You were created to walk your own, with faith, with courage, with patience. And comparison pulls you off that path. Imagine planting a seed. You water it every day, give it sunlight, and nurture it. Now, would you dig it up every day to see if it's growing? Would you compare it to a tree next to it that was planted years before? Of course not. You trust that in time your seed will bloom. Life is just like that. You are a seed. And just because someone else is blooming now doesn't mean your season won't come. God doesn't forget seeds. He's just preparing the right time for your growth. This world has taught us to chase validation, to be faster, richer, more popular, more attractive. But life isn't a race, it's a journey. Some people start early, some bloom late, but no one's timing is wrong when it's in alignment with divine order. When you understand that truth, peace replaces pressure. You stop rushing. You stop doubting. You start living. Another danger of comparison is that it makes you inauthentic. You begin changing yourself, not to grow, but to fit in. You start adjusting your dreams, not because they no longer inspire you, have become chosen, but because you think someone else's dream looks more valuable. That's the worst betrayal. Not when others don't believe in you, but when you stop believing in your own calling. Your self-worth can never come from being better than someone else. It must come from being better than who you were yesterday. That's the only fair comparison. You are not in competition with anyone. You are not here to prove your worth through someone else's pace. The only person you are meant to rise above is the old version of you. We live in a world that shows us polished images, but not the truth. So you must train your mind to stay grounded in reality. Real growth is quiet. Real healing takes time. Real joy doesn't need to be posted to be real. And real self-worth, it comes valuing chosen. It when you stop chasing other people's lives and start honoring your own. You don't need to become someone else to be valuable. You need to become more of yourself, more rooted, more accepting, more peaceful with you are and hopeful about where you're going. Because when you begin to trust your process, the need to compare disappears. You finally start to see that your path, your story, your timing, it's not just enough, it's divinely perfect. So the next time you catch yourself comparing, pause, breathe, Remind yourself, their journey is not mine. My blessings are coming. My path is sacred. And I am enough right where I am. That shift in mindset is where freedom begins and where true self-worth starts to grow. One of the most overlooked and quietly damaging habits is the inability to forgive yourself. It sounds simple, maybe even obvious, but most people don't realize how deeply they are carrying guilt, shame, and regret within themselves. This habit doesn't always show up with loud voices or dramatic breakdowns. Sometimes it's in the silence, in the quiet sighs, in the way we avoid mirrors, in the way we downplay our potential. We punish ourselves quietly by holding on to things we should have released long ago. We all make mistakes. That is part of being human. But the problem begins when those mistakes become permanent definitions in our minds. You may have failed once and now label yourself a failure. You may have hurt someone and now believe you're a bad person. You may have taken a wrong turn in life and now feel permanently disqualified from happiness. But here's the truth. One chapter is not the whole book. You are not your worst day. You are not your darkest moment. But if you never learn to forgive yourself, you trap your soul in a prison built by your own hands. Think about it like this. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack filled with stones. Each stone represents a moment you haven't forgiven yourself for. A mistake, a regret, a bad decision, a lost opportunity. At first, you may not even feel the weight. You may think you've moved on. But as time passes, that backpack gets heavier. It begins to slow you down. You wonder why you feel tired, uninspired, unmotivated. You start questioning your worth. But the truth is, it's not your potential that's the problem. It's the weight you refuse to put down. Now take a moment and ask yourself, what are you still holding on to? That one thing you never told anyone. That one decision that still haunts you. That one time you disappointed yourself so badly, you decided you weren't worthy anymore. Those are the wounds that fester in silence. And until you release them, they control you. They color the way you see the world. They shape the way you love yourself. And most dangerously, they become the lens through which you interpret your value. Forgiving yourself doesn't mean you approve of what happened. It doesn't mean you ignore the consequences or deny responsibility. It means you finally recognize that punishing yourself every day for something that's already done does not heal you. It only keeps you stuck. Self-forgiveness is not about forgetting the lesson. It's about setting your spirit free to grow beyond the mistake. Let's bring this into a relatable example. Imagine a man who made a bad financial decision. Maybe he invested in something without thinking, lost money, and put his family in a difficult position. Years go by. He recovers financially, but emotionally, he's still broken. Every time he thinks of dreaming big again, he remembers that failure. Every time someone tells him he's capable, he doubts it. Why? Because he has not forgiven himself. He wears his mistake like a scarlet letter on his chest, forgetting that the same mistake taught him wisdom he didn't have before. That wisdom is now a tool. But he cannot use it because he still sees it as a wound. This is the tragedy of unforgiveness. It doesn't just hurt us, it freezes us. It prevents us from stepping into the new version of ourselves that's already waiting on the other side of self-compassion. God, in all His wisdom, does not hold our mistakes over us the way we do. The divine design of life is built on growth, not condemnation. If the higher power believes in your ability to rise again, who are you not to? Self-forgiveness also teaches us humility. It reminds us that we are not perfect, and that's okay. We will fall. We will disappoint ourselves. But the beauty lies in rising again, this time stronger, this time softer, this time wiser. When you forgive yourself, you don't become weak. You become powerful. You reclaim the energy you were using to hate yourself and redirect it toward rebuilding your life. Think of a cracked pot that holds water. Most would throw it away. But in some cultures, those cracks are filled with gold to show that the vessel, once broken, is now more beautiful because of what it's been through. That is what forgiveness does. It fills your cracks with grace. It doesn't erase your past. It transforms it into something sacred. You deserve that kind of transformation. You deserve to look in the mirror and no longer see the version of you that failed. You deserve to see someone who fought to rise, someone who stumbled but kept walking, someone who finally stopped living in punishment and started living in purpose. So, if you are carrying the weight of your past, let today be the day you put it down. Close your eyes, breathe deep, and whisper to yourself, I did the best I could with what I knew then. I'm learning, I'm growing, and I forgive myself. You may cry, you may feel resistance. That's okay. Healing isn't about perfection, it's about progress. One layer at a time. And remember this, God never created you to live in shame. You are not your mistake, you are the miracle rising from it. Let that miracle breathe, let it shine, let it live.